Hello, hello, everyone. We'll just give everyone a few minutes to roll on in, and then we'll dive in because we have lots of great questions that were sent in ahead of time. And then I'm going to be talking about adding a new dog to my home and how that's been, and some quick tips and things. We'll do that first before diving into all the other questions we've gotten over the last couple weeks since we sent the word out that it was Ask a Trainer Anything. But before we dive in, just a few housekeeping things. Please keep your mic muted until we get to that question and answer part. That way everyone can hear the speaker. We love videos so that we can see all the puppies and dogs and how they're doing with you. We love to meet puppies. I just love puppies on my screen all day. So please keep your video on, but do be aware that we are recording this session so that we can put it on our YouTube channel after, so that people who can't attend live can watch it there afterwards. And then use the chat button at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions. Mia, my coworker, is going to be helping me ask the questions later so that I can answer them for you. So you can throw questions anytime into chat or even just to say hi. And like I mentioned, we'll cover kind of quickly multi-dog households before we dive into the great questions that got sent in earlier. And as a thank you for attending our Yappy Hours, we do offer $10 off for our Puppy Essentials workshops that we have. I love these because I get to really work with people in small group settings, really personalized training. Right now we offer socialization foundations. You get to see lots of videos of my puppy, Fozzie Bear, being socialized, which has been harder during the COVID pandemic. So lots of tips there. We also have crate training, potty training. We have one for nipping and biting, which is a big puppyhood issue. We also have one that's for puppies of all ages, which is all about barking. So if you use the code YAPPY10 at our store at PreventiveVet.com, you get $10 off any of those essentials workshops. And then I'm also really excited to announce our new offering, which is virtual one-on-one training with me. I'm excited to roll these out for everyone to really dive deep into your issues that you're having with your dog. And we can work on things as easy as basic obedience all the way up to more complex behavior issues like separation anxiety, leash aggression, and things like that. Virtual training is kind of the new thing for dog trainers thanks to COVID. And I've actually been really enjoying my sessions with my clients who've been doing those. So check that out at PreventiveVet.com along with our Puppy Essentials workshop. And let's see here, get my stuff ready to show you. So I added a new puppy, 2 months ago now. I don't know time anymore. So I added a puppy 2 months ago to my household where we already had a 10-and-a-half-year-old dog, Suki. She is pretty mellow. She's pretty, kind of one of those dogs that's like, I will tolerate other dogs. She has very picky taste when it comes to playmates and things like that at daycare. But she does okay with other dogs. But I knew, having been 3 years since she had lived in the same house as another dog, that it might be a little different for her now because she's older. When I brought her home first, she was 1.5 years, and then I had a 6-year-old dog. So they're a little actually closer matched age-wise, and they bonded really closely. And then we lost him about 3 years ago, and it's taken me that long to add another dog to my life again. But we actually got Fozzie Bear, who is her great-great-nephew, one of those, same breeder. And so I was really excited to add a new puppy, but I was a little worried about how she'd do with the change in routine. And bringing home another dog when you already have a dog or 2 other dogs, it's a big transition, not only for the new dog who is going through this big change, especially if they're a new puppy. They're leaving their litter and their mother and the only environment they've known and coming into this new place. And especially if there's a dog that they're unfamiliar with and unrelated with, there can be some tension. And that's normal, right? They're going to kind of work through some stuff and figure out what the new routines are going to be. So I like to think about managing multi-dog households as far as managing space, managing their play and their interactions, and then managing relationships, not just their relationship, but my relationship with each dog. Um, I always think about it as the dog that was there first. They didn't ask for a puppy, right? They didn't ask for you to bring a new puppy home. So I try to make sure that they're not getting overly stressed with having a new dog in the home. And I try to really advocate for them so that they don't feel like, wow, you brought home this new toy and I'm just over here hanging out, right? That's not fair. So I want them to feel comfortable, not stressed. And I want the new dog to kind of integrate into what I already have set up routine wise and environment wise. So I'll show you some pictures and then also some videos too of kind of what I've been doing with my dogs. Speaking of managing space, it's really important to set up areas for your dogs, older dog and new dog. So especially puppies, creating and using a puppy playpen, super useful all of the time for many reasons. But having somewhere where they can go when they might be really irritating your older dog. You can see Suki here on the couch. The couch in our house is the safe space. There's no playing allowed on the couch. It's a calm area. And so she knows that she can escape there when she might be feeling overwhelmed and I'm not right there to manage it for her. So you can see Fozzie Bear's just hanging out with this giant snake toy on the floor. And then Suki's up on the couch. This was just a day or two after we brought Fozzie home. So her facial expressions change as time goes on, as far as like how much she's tolerating it versus actually liking it. So that's been great to see. But you want to make sure that your older dog has a safe space they can go, that the puppy can't get to them or the new dog can't get to them and bother them and pester them, right? So they always have the opportunity to escape if they feel like it. And safe spaces aren't just useful for when you have multiple dogs, they're useful for when you have guests over and are having a party when we get back to those someday soon. When thunderstorms and all the like fireworks that could freak out a dog, having a safe space can really be beneficial for them. So when you're managing their space, make sure that you stay consistent. Like I mentioned, they're not allowed to play on the couch. Fozzie wants to play on the couch all the time, and he jumps up there now that he's big enough to get up on the couch. He jumps up there and tries to play. I have to be very consistent and being like, nope, you're going to go back on the ground. Here's something for you to do. So if you do need to remove your puppy and put them in their crate or their playpen, make sure that they're still getting some enrichment, some activity, because all they have is just that endless energy, right? And so you want to redirect that to something appropriate to take it away from the older dog having to deal with, right? One thing I do too in managing space is I manage resources and how things like shoes, food bowls, all the things that dogs are like, I want what you have. And I swear, like you give them the same thing and they just want what the other one has because it has to be better. But I'll share a video here of Fozzie and Suki. This is actually the first day that I brought Fozzie home, where I set down some licking mats, and licking is a very calming behavior for dogs. And so I filled it with some frozen kibble, some food. You can do peanut butter, Greek yogurt. And I put it down for them and I have them separated with a puppy playpen. So this is part of that managing space. Use gates to your advantage, right? What I like about being able to see through is that they are learning, okay, I can be calm and have something awesome going on in the presence of the other dog. So if you do have an older dog who is like, why did you bring this thing home? Right? If you want to start to change their emotional response to being around that new crazy puppy, you can do some calming activities where they're closer to each other, but still separated so that the older dog doesn't feel pressured or that they're stuck. And then that the puppy can't go and overwhelm them and jump on them and play on them. So you'll see here, this is them enjoying their licky mat, separated from each other. And so this is building really positive emotional responses to the presence of the other dog. So I like doing a lot of enrichment activities near each other, but separated, right? So think about how you can do that if you have a new puppy, if they're in their pen, or if you brought home a new adult dog, having a baby gate set up where they're in separate areas, right? And learning just kind of how to do their own thing around a valuable resource, right? But they're separate, right? So there's no need to resource guard there. I am going to show you another video having to kind of do with resource guarding, where I started to actually play around with not having the separation. And what's important for this next video is please don't do this at home. I was doing this one because I know my dog, I know Suki, I know her correction style with puppies. And I wanted Fozzie to learn from her of like, hey, these are the limits. Also, I wanted to get some video examples of pester barking, demand barking at another dog of like, play with me, play with me, play with me. And so you'll see Fozzie here starting to pester bark at her, and it's teaching him in a way I can't teach him because I'm not a dog. It's teaching him, hey, back off because you're being really annoying. Also, there is some resource guarding. You'll see that there is a bully stick in front of her. She's not chewing on it. She just likes to sit with it because it's hers. And she's basically telling him, back off from me. And that's different than if I was to just manage it. I usually recommend manage the situation, right? Keep them separated. Don't have really valuable chews out unless there are a lot of them and you know that your dogs are good at not resource guarding. It takes time and training to get there. But with him, I wanted to see how does he respond to an appropriate correction from an older dog. And I wanted to get the video footage. So let me share that here for you. Here we go. Go back to the beginning.
Oh, you ready? Oh.
I love that at the end there, he's like, fine, and he walks away. So I know Suki's correction style with puppies. She doesn't overcorrect. This is something that when you have multiple dogs, they are going to tell each other, hey, that's too much. And that's okay that they tell each other that, as long as they're not overcorrecting, right? So that they're not just going wham and they pin the dog and keep going in their correction. That's how you end up with fights, right? So that correction Suki gave was like, hey, stop that. And then you saw her immediately turn around and look at me like, why didn't you step in sooner? And then you also saw Fozzie go, woo, sorry. And then he really relaxed after that. He was like, okay, I'm not going to bug you quite so much, right? You can't handle that. So part of that was him wanting to play with her. And part of it was, I don't know, that bully stick looks pretty yummy, right? So when you're managing those two dogs in a multi-dog household or 3 dogs, you really want to make sure that they're not overcorrecting each other and that they're being appropriate in their corrections with each other, and then stepping in when you need, right? So you really do need to know your dogs, how socialized they are with other dogs, and go from there and really manage it carefully so that you don't end up with intra-household aggression, which can be very, very tough to fix. A lot easier to prevent through management and then kind of creating those positive associations with just being around each other and around resources as you go. Speaking of managing play, I want you to see how I manage it's about a minute long, how I manage a session of play between the 2 dogs, because eventually Fozzie is going to be bigger than Suki. Right now he was much smaller in this video. He's not as small anymore. His ears are ginormous now. But you can see how she is actually a little intense. And so I kind of back her off a little bit in this video. So I'll share that here so you can see how I manage the play, but I do let them kind of figure it out for themselves as well, about what they can handle. And this is good for Fozzie to learn, okay, if I'm too crazy, she'll correct me. This is okay play behavior with me.
Cookie, good girl. You're bigger than him. Good. Good girl. Good. Be careful. Good girl. Gentle please.
I could probably watch my dogs play all day. So one thing there is I'm looking for frequent pauses in the play. So if you were watching, Suki would pause and like take a break for a second. When she stopped giving those pauses as frequently and got a little bit more amped up, and I was like, Suki, right? Good name recognition practice, just to a positive interrupter, right? What's interesting too is Fozzie feels comfortable enough to actually roll on his back a lot, exposing his belly. That's not always a submissive thing, right? It just means that they're comfortable with their playmate. In that context, you see him keep coming back for more, even though she might have been like bigger and growlier than him in her play. She is a loud player. So you want to manage the play really carefully to make sure that neither one of them gets overstimulated and overcorrects, right? And then any new puppies, especially, that they don't get overwhelmed with loud, rambunctious, older dog play, especially if you have a larger dog compared to the puppy. So you want to manage that play really carefully as you help the new dog adjust into the new home. And then Suki started off kind of just tolerating Fozzie in the household, but now they're like best buddies. And now you can see his ears are up. They're bigger than his face. So now they're doing really well. There are still some things that I have to be very careful of: managing resources, managing the chews that are around. If they're very high value, they will just bug each other, right? So I'm not going to give those chews or those resources when I'm not there to manage it. And if I can't watch like a hawk, I'm going to put Fozzie into his crate with his licking mat, and then Suki's out on the other side of the room with her licking mat, or vice versa. So you can integrate a new dog into a home with a senior dog. It just takes a lot more management, especially because if senior dogs have some mobility issues or arthritis or pain, you want to make sure that the puppy's not going to exacerbate that. And we did have a couple questions come in specifically about older, multiple dogs in the household, especially senior dogs. So the first one was from Cheryl, who says, I have an old Yorkie and a new puppy who just wants to play. And as expected, the Yorkie wants nothing to do with her. She's not sure if she should intervene or not. And she says she feels bad for the 15-year-old Yorkie because he won't fight back. So he's constantly hiding or running away. And Cheryl's keeping them separated to ease the older dog stress, which is perfect. That's a perfect place to start, right? You don't want to cause more stress, especially to a 15-year-old Yorkie, by bringing in a new puppy and letting that puppy overwhelm them, right? Eventually, he's going to stop running away and he is going to tell that puppy off, and it's going to be a negative experience for the puppy and for him, and can really cause some relationship issues between them going forward. So managing the environment is always the first thing I think about, right? I am going to keep them separated when I can't work on behavior modification and training to make their situation better, right? So I'm going to keep them separated. The next thing I would do in her situation is I'd start to practice rewarding calm for the puppy in the presence of the older dog. So doing things like I showed you in that video of Fozzie Bear having a licking mat on one side of the pen, and then the older dog getting something positive too. And this is important. So the puppy is getting rewarded for being calm, right, around that other dog. And the older dog is getting rewarded for just being around the puppy and knowing the puppy can't get me, so I'm going to relax, right? I'm going to start to learn that the puppy's not always just in my face jumping on me, right? So managing that situation and adding in something positive for both of them in the presence of the other. The other thing you can do to kind of teach a puppy to settle around older dogs, especially, is one, make sure that they're getting enough mental enrichment and exercise, burning some of their energy so they're not directing it all at the senior dog, right? That is too much for a senior dog to handle. They didn't sign up to be the babysitter, right? So you have to make sure that your puppy is getting enough stimulation, that they're not just putting it all on the older dog. You can also, second, practice sitting in the same room, like your family room, wherever you hang out usually, where you want your dogs to just hang out and chillax together. Have the puppy on a leash, right? The older dog gets free roam, so the older dog has the opportunity to leave, right? Anytime that puppy just goes and kind of takes a breath and shows some settled behavior, yes, here's a treat, right? So you can reward those specific moments, right? And then if the puppy gets too excited and just pester barks or really wants to play with the older dog, redirect them to you. They can't get to the older dog because they're on a leash. Redirect them to you. Maybe do a 1-minute training session, right? Help them burn some energy, or play with them yourself without the older dog involved. Because again, your older dog's learning, okay, you're managing it, you've got it. So I don't have to worry as much and always be as scared. And then the puppy is getting rewarded for interacting with you rather than the older dog. And then also for the calm moments that you're going to be marking as well. That's what I would start with in Cheryl's situation particularly. And like I said, if I'm not there to manage it, they're going to be separated until that puppy ages up and matures and is able to kind of control those impulses a little better. And then we also had a question from Kathleen, who has a puppy named Abigail. She says, how do you get older dogs to bond with the puppy when they don't like the jumping and avoid the puppy? Great question, because a lot of people get another dog because they're like, well, I want a playmate or a buddy for my current dog. It takes time for sure, because puppies are just this crazy big ball of energy. And a lot of even just like 4 or 5-year-old adult dogs, not to mention the 10 plus senior dogs, they're like, what is this? Right? It's a lot to handle. So give it time, right? You want to give them a chance to settle into the new routine, to go through that transition period of having a new dog in the household. But then you can do the same kinds of things I mentioned for Cheryl's situation, which is creating positive associations when they're in the presence of each other and managing that interaction so it's not overwhelming for the senior dog, right? And making sure that the senior dog knows they're not being replaced in any way, so they still do get the attention and the love and rewarded, right, with you and the puppy as well. And then think about different activities that they can start to do together. And this really depends on the dog. Sometimes if you find that they both like tug, you can play tug with both of them at the same time, right? One tug toy over here, one tug toy over here, and they're playing tug, not with each other, but it's all a group activity, right? So you're building positive reinforcement histories for them being around each other and letting them figure out their relationship as well. And in some cases, dogs don't bond quite the way that we expect them to. And that's okay, right? It's okay if our new puppy is not the best buddy of our other dog, right? You're the center of that dog's universe, and that is plenty for them, right? Relationship wise. So don't feel like they have to they have to love each other, right? We want them to get along, but we don't want them to feel like, God, you're really forcing this relationship, right? So give it some time, Kathleen. Really work on positive experiences around each other, and then managing that energy. So having Abigail on leash with you when the other dog's around, or in the pen, and doing kind of positive things both together at the same time. And as Abigail ages up, she will mature and get a little less crazy. I'm used to corgis who settled down at around like 8 or 9, but with Abigail, it'll probably be sooner with her breed. So great questions there. Let me know if you have any other questions specific to multi-dog households in the chat. Mia is going to be helping me. We got a bunch of questions sent in, so she's going to help by reading those out for me and going through those. But if we get any live questions, she'll pepper those in as we go as well.
All right, I'll let you take a sip of your drink, Kathy. Hey, everybody. And thank you to everybody that sent in great questions. All right. So Pete asks, we just brought a 9-week-old golden retriever home and find conflicting information on how to provide water. Oh, good question. Should we limit access to specific times of the day or allow ready access?
Great question. Yeah. And you go on the internet and you can find an answer, like 5 answers for one question, and you have no idea which one's right. So for a 9-week-old golden retriever, I'm always thinking about one, potty training, right? And so we do want to be aware of when a puppy that young is drinking water, because that will usually make them have to go to the bathroom, and we don't want them to have an accident inside. I personally recommend always having free access to water, no matter the dog's age. You do want to make sure, if you do decide to take away water at certain times, that there's no medical reason that they need access to water. There are medications or diseases and illnesses that can cause increased thirst. And so you want to make sure your dog's always hydrated. But with the potty training, if I have a puppy, especially at nighttime, that's having really frequent accidents at nighttime, one, I always say check them out at the vet for any UTI, any other issues that could be causing those frequent accidents. But you could take away water maybe an hour or two ahead of time before they go to sleep, so that they're not just chugging it right before bed, and then like halfway through the night they're like, I gotta go right now, take me outside. But I actually personally have water accessible to my puppy all the time. He even has a water bottle, like a hamster water bottle attached to his crate at nighttime. So it really is about being on top of it with the potty training and accepting that for the first few weeks, you'll be doing nighttime potty breaks and never sleep. Those of you that saw me in some of the Puppy Essentials workshops those first couple of weeks saw the circles. So it's just part of it. But I would recommend always having water access for dogs, and then just staying on top of it for potty training. You can take it away, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Thank you, Kathy. First of all, I saw Kelly's dog in my little corner. It's super cute.
What is that? Oh my goodness. Yeah, she's huge.
Yeah, it's Hope. She's giant now.
She is giant. I was like,
she's like 2 heads taller than Sadie.
Oh my goodness.
Sadie
I know Hope from in-person training, and then Sadie from puppy classes way back when. I love that. Anyway, sorry.
So we actually just got a question from, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Nastasia.
Either way.
I pronounced it wrong one of the ways for sure, but she has a great question. She says, maybe you covered this already, but you didn't. But my question is, how can I train my puppy around my older dog? My puppy is a Frenchie, which I love, and her other dog is a 10-year-old cattle dog mix rescue, and thinks that I'm talking to her when I'm talking to the puppy.
Yes, I feel your pain. And I'm a professional, so right. So I think about it. Do I want to be training 2 dogs right now, or do I want to be training 1 dog right now? Right. And you can do both, but I actually recommend starting with 1 dog at a time. So having the older dog separated somehow. What I've been doing with Suki, because Suki is super food driven and she loves clicker training. So she sees me grab a clicker, she's like, whoa, right? And she will like jump over the bed to get to where I'm at with the puppy. So I will use gates. I will put her in the puppy pen. But what I'm doing at the same time is intermittently, I am tossing a treat to her where she is, so that she's not like, I need to get over there. She's actually getting reinforced for staying settled in a separate area while I work with the other dog. So that's some of the management I do, right, by separating. You can eventually build it up to where they're both free, right, and you're working on training both. And this is where having a cue, something to tell them, I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to both of you, right? And the way I do this is if I say their name first and then ask for a cue, that's them to do, right? Same thing when I give treats, and this is actually really important for multiple dogs, is Sookie, here's a treat, right? And then Fozzie, here's your treat. Because if they both sit for me, I want to give them treats, but I don't want Fozzie all up in Sookie's face trying to get her treat, which he would try to do because he loves food too. We fit so well together, us three. We all love food. So I like to have something that differentiates, okay, this is yours, this is yours. Same for cues. If I don't say a name beforehand, right, and I say sit, then I want both of them to sit, right? And so you have to be really kind of clear with your dogs and think ahead of what you want that to be in your training, as far as, okay, like I'm going to use names as a way to differentiate for them. When I don't want to think about having to reward both dogs for different things, especially, I'm going to keep them separated. But in the follow-up email, I'll also include a link to some of Kiko Pup's videos. She's awesome. And she has, I think she has 4 dogs right now, and she has some great tutorials on how to work with multiple dogs at a time and kind of having that differential cue so that they know who you're talking to. But you really want to think about, I'm going to manage the space so that I can work and focus on one dog and reward the other dog for staying settled. And then when I'm working with 2, it's just a lot more practice on the human side as far as mechanics and how you're doing it. Because if you train a dog, you know how hard it is with body language to get one to do one and then the other to do the other thing, and then all of a sudden they're in the other dog's space. So it takes practice. So just build up to that. But that's what I would do. Keep them separated. Treat the older dog for staying settled, right? You're training that behavior, and then work on whatever you want to work on with the puppy. It's great.
All right. We've got another question from Lois. She has a Vizsla mix who has started licking his paws. He started this a couple of months ago and hasn't stopped. He's a 5-year-old rescue, and she's had him for 4 years, and he never did it before. She's wondering what she can do to stop it.
Yes. So acral licking is what this is called, but a lot of dogs will lick their paws or like shoulder area. It can have a few different causes. The most common causes are medical. So you definitely want to check with your veterinarian about possible reasons. That could be something like allergies, and allergies can develop over time and pop up. It could be pain. We see this a lot, actually. So it could be something painful in the paw that needs to be addressed. Could be something like arthritis starting to develop. Lots of reasons that your veterinarian will go through with you and kind of really make sure that those aren't the reasons. Behaviorally, licking can happen due to stress and anxiety, separation anxiety. Acral licking is a symptom, and it can get so bad that dogs will lick themselves raw and then have to get treated for that. So it can be pretty serious. It could also be OCD related. A dog picks something to do and they do it over and over and over again, usually triggered by stress. So I always look into, is there any anxiety going on? Is it maybe during thunderstorms, fireworks, although that's probably not her issue because it's going on for so long. But you want to look into what stress are they under? Is that causing it? If it's not medical. It could also just be a lack of enrichment for the dog. So really coming up with ways to provide them something else to lick than themselves. That's a good way to burn energy. So that dog could be bored and just wanting to do something. And this feels good, so I'm going to do this, right? And they lick themselves. You saw it in the video earlier. This is Fozzie's licking mat. I use this as a replacement licking target. So this is really good. Licking is a calming behavior, hence why we see it with dogs who are feeling anxious or stressed. They will do it to calm themselves down. But we want them to lick something more appropriate than their paws or themselves, so that they don't have those medical issues pop up. The other one, my favorite right now, is the West Paw Topple. Very similar to a Kong, but a bigger opening. Especially for puppies, it's a lot easier. They don't get frustrated. But creating some enrichment activities using these kinds of things to give her dog something else to lick while she figures out what could be the underlying cause. And then if it's something like allergies or pain, the vet's going to really walk her through treatment for that. If it's more behavioral, if it was something like OCD, if we've ruled out everything else and it's OCD, then it's time for a behavior consultant. or a veterinary behaviorist. So those cases do take some time to really work through as you go. But otherwise, I would provide some other licking opportunities for the dog in the meantime while she figures out the root cause.
All right. Our next question is from Kim, who says, we brought our puppy Morty home on July 1st. It's a Boston Terrier. And he has a very anxious disposition, and he's a brachycephalic. So that flat-faced dog, which I have a pug and had a Frenchie, so I'm very familiar with that. But she says that it's worse at night. She tried crating him in their bedroom the first few nights, and his stress plus their sleeplessness led to them making the poor decision of allowing him in their bed. As he's grown, his breathing condition has gotten worse. He'll have airway surgery in a few months when he's old enough, and it wakes them up many times per night. So she's wondering, how can we get this anxious pup sleeping in his own bed when sleeping with us has brought him so much comfort, especially when he has breathing difficulties?
Right. Yeah. And that's a common problem for the brachycephalic dogs, those flat faces, breathing issues, and then add in some anxiety, and it's even harder for them to breathe. So I'm really happy that she's getting that taken care of with the vet, and that they've been working with their vet on that. It's really encouraging. As far as transitioning a puppy who's kind of learned sleeping in bed is where I sleep, and it's secure and safe. This is like where I feel safe and less anxious. Transitioning them to a new bed takes some time. So what I would actually do is I would set up, I wouldn't go straight to a crate. I actually would go to maybe a little pen set up right next to the bed, because you're going to be slowly moving the proximity as you go, where there's a really cozy space set up for the dog. Having something like, I live in like this magic land where I pull like puppy things out of nowhere. Something like the Snuggle Puppy, where it's nice and cozy. There's a heartbeat that you can turn on inside. There's a heat pack you can do. My puppy loves his. I don't use the heat pack and the heartbeat anymore, actually for him, but he still uses it as a pillow. But creating a little bed space right next to the bed in a pen where the dog can start to feel more secure and still feel close to you, but be separated so that you can get some sleep, right? And we all need our sleep. So I would move the bed right next to it, make it super cozy, even consider plugging in Adaptil diffusers, which is a dog pheromone. I swear it is magic. I have one right here. This can help puppies especially. It's a synthetic version of the pheromone that the mother dog emits when she's lactating. So litters of puppies smell this and they feel like, oh, this is safe, right? So kind of playing off of that and creating a space where the dog's comfortable, cozy, but still close to you, but not in bed with you. And so then if the puppy starts to get restless and kind of starts to get anxious, it's still easy to kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm right here, right? And so having that physical touch with you is still there, and trying to just make it as cozy as possible there. Having the pen means that the dog can't get up onto the bed, right? And so it does take some consistency to break that habit, because they're like, but I'm supposed to be up there, right? And I've actually started doing this where early in the morning we get up at 6 for a potty break, and I'm like, I don't want to wake up quite yet, so we go back to bed, and I actually let him sleep in bed with us now. But I would not do that if he was having trouble sleeping in his crate. So if we're having trouble sleeping in a crate or a playpen, then we need to be consistent with, you're going to sleep here. I might sit with you even as you fall asleep, right? I might be here to comfort you if you start to get anxious, right? We don't want to make that dog more anxious with the breathing issues. So it's, I'm right here. I'm going to wait till you kind of settle down, fall asleep. And then I'm still very close by, right? So there will probably be a lot of reassurance throughout that process. But if you start really close, and then depending on where you want the dog to eventually sleep, you just slowly start to move it there as they settle into that new routine. So I just change where the sleeping area is going to be, make it close, make it safe, and go from there.
All right. Our next question is from Janet, who says she has a 2-year-old mini Australian Shepherd who will begin the activity restricted phase of heartworm treatment in a month. What is the best way to quickly crate train him?
Yeah. So if you're crate training an adult dog, it's a little different than a puppy who is more, no puppy is a blank slate, but more of a blank slate than an adult dog. So they already have this habit. They might not be used to being confined. And so we want to be really systematic in how we introduce it and really create a positive association with it. And so what I would do is there's a couple things. You can actually start with a pen, right? As a larger confinement area, so they don't feel all of a sudden they're in a smaller crate. Crates shouldn't be very large. They're really only 1.5 times the length of a dog usually. They're meant to be settled and they lay down and sleep. A pen gives them a little bit more room to hang out. And so you could start introducing a pen and then put an open crate inside of it, right? As the cozy spot within the pen, as the bed, so that if they choose to go in there and lie down, awesome, right? We want them to be like, oh, this is nice. I'm going to go in here on my own, right? So I'd start with a pen. I'd also have the crate and do some actual training with crate training rather than kind of being like, well, let's wait and see if he goes in. So you want to actually be like, if you go into the crate following a lure, yes, here's a treat in there, right? Teaching them to go to crate on cue. And if you have a food motivated dog, an Aussie Shepherd will probably be like a rock star at this. They go in there because they know that it's rewarding for them. And then you just build up on that. You start with just going in, and then you add on laying down, and then you add on down stay in the crate, right? And then you add in closing the door, all the fun crate training steps. Adult dogs can progress through this pretty quickly, just like puppies. It just depends on the dog. You don't want to move too fast too soon with an adult dog crate training because you don't want them to be like, whoa, this is actually awful. And then you kind of lose all the training that you've done up to that point. So doing some actual training sessions, going into the crate and relaxing, but also doing things like feeding meals in the crate or in the pen, if you start with the pen, where your meal happens in here, I'm not closing the door on you quite yet, right? So the first few days, a week that you do this, all of the good stuff happens in your crate. Awesome. As they're getting better and better at that, okay, they're eating their meal. I'm going to close the door, but then immediately open it again, right? And then next meal time, I'm going to close the door, and they're doing fine. They don't really seem to care. Before they finish eating, I'm going to open the door again. So I'm going to build the duration that they're in their crate as they go, to make sure that they're able to handle being confined longer. This is especially important for the heartworm prevention or the heartworm treatment that they're doing. They have to really be settled, right? So that they can go through that. So building up the duration of settled behavior is really important. Speaking of that, since she has an Aussie and she needs longer like crate rest, providing lots of low level enrichment activities that aren't going to amp the energy up, but still burn some energy so that he just doesn't get stir crazy. That's really important too. And introducing those things while you're crate training is going to go a long way, right? Because you're crate training with them, and then you're also burning some energy out. So food puzzles, snuffle mats, even short training sessions like clicker training or just using yes instead of a clicker, 2 to 5 minutes at a time with really like not a lot of movement. You can do really easy things like touch, right? Nose to the hand, shake, things like that aren't moving the dog around and getting them really active. It burns brain energy. So combining the basic crate training with some of that mental enrichment is going to go a long way for her. But it really is the same process as a puppy. It just you might have to like tweak some things as you go.
Okay, awesome. All right, from Natalie. My puppy eats so much grass and so many sticks and other things found in the yard. She loves them so much and will not stop no matter what we do. She runs outside when she's supposed to be going potty and sits down and eats stuff. We've tried redirecting, picking her up and correcting, which doesn't work. Things are starting to make her feel sick and get tummy issues, so we need to stop this quickly.
Yeah. Great question. Puppies put everything in their mouth, like everything in their mouth. And then like they eat it really fast. And also they eat it faster when they know that you want it, right? So they're like, no, it's mine. And they swallow it. And that can be really dangerous, right? You can get obstructions that are very expensive to have done. They can eat something toxic, right? And so you really want to make sure that they're not just picking up everything and acting as a vacuum. So my first thing would be, especially with puppies, and you take them outside for potty breaks, they're on leash so that they can't run off and explore the world and put things in their mouth and pick them up, right? You have a little bit more control, right? You want to keep them in their potty spot, right? And then once they go potty, give them something appropriate to put in their mouth in the outside, right? So I'm redirecting all of that. Like, I want to put everything in my mouth. I'm redirecting that to a toy outside or going back inside, right? So I'm managing the environment by having them on leash, and I'm giving them something else appropriate to do with their mouth. Enrichment is really a lot. It's an answer for a lot of things. If we provide a lot of mental enrichment activities for our puppies and our dogs, it can really help with other problem behaviors because they're just channeling all that energy into appropriate things rather than inappropriate things. In really severe cases, say pica, dogs can get pica where they eat something a lot. You can do muzzle training. I wouldn't recommend it for a puppy because they're just being a puppy at that point. But if you do have an older dog that is just, they inhale things, then muzzle training can be really helpful, especially if you're on walks and they pick up things off the side of the road. You basically condition them to wearing a muzzle. So the muzzle's awesome to them. They're like, peanut butter happens when I wear this muzzle. Get them comfortable wearing it, and that can help prevent inhaling and eating things. But for that puppy, manage it, have her on leash, right? Don't give her lots of freedom to go and get things in her mouth. So this might actually mean puppy proofing a part of the yard, right? Or the patio or whatever it is, so that there aren't a lot of things for them to put in their mouth. I'm having this issue with our patio. It's fall time. And so now leaves are starting to fall. And so my poor boyfriend is having to blow off all the leaves every day. I make him do it every day. So fun, but that's managing it so he's just not eating all these leaves because he's like, these are crunchy, right? And they're fun. So I'm managing the environment that way. But we have a small patio. I don't have a large yard. So think about, okay, this is your potty area. If you can have a little bit of on-leash access with me in this side because I've gone through and picked up some dangerous items you might eat. The other thing is redirection is the top thing training-wise I would work on, such as name recognition of just look at me, right? And you break your focus on the thing that you keep wanting to eat, right? But it is hard when you don't build a strong foundation of it without distractions first. So doing a lot of name recognition and say touch, right? Come over here and touch my hand. Practice that a lot inside before expecting a puppy to be able to do it outside, because outside is often more rewarding for puppies than we are because they see us all the time. So all of a sudden they're outside, they're like, big wide world, I don't care about you. Like, I want this rock, right? And so we have to make sure we have a strong foundation of behaviors to use as a way to redirect them. We can't expect them to just be able to do it when there's something that might be more reinforcing for them in the environment. So that's something to really focus on inside. And then when you do take it outside to start practicing, bring very high value treats, increase the value of the reward you're giving them for performing it around the distraction, the other thing they want, have them on leash, right? So that they can't get something else and you can reward them for giving you the attention instead of redirecting. So you have to really focus on that foundational behavior. That's what I would do. It's tough. Puppies are fast. Also work on drop it. I'll put that in the follow-up resources. Drop it and leave it. I will put those, the how-to articles we have about those.
All right. Also, fun fact while I'm looking for the next question, goats love leaves that are falling from trees. They're like, we call them chips from the sky.
Chips from the sky. Mia volunteers at a goat rescue and she posts the best photos every Friday. So that's why you know so much about goats.
I don't know that I know that much about them besides, like, you know, habits, I guess, and their cuteness. All right. Next question is from Patty. My puppy Millie, a red-bone coonhound, seems to be a digger. not sure how to stop it. And she can get so nippy when she's first awake or just outside with energy. Mostly my husband has this occur, but she does try to nip at my sweatpant legs and tug on them.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll talk about the digging first. Digging is a natural dog behavior, unfortunately for us. And so you can't necessarily train it out of a dog, but you can address the underlying reason they're digging. Dogs dig for different reasons. Some dogs dig in the summer to cool off. They like dig a little bed where it's cooler. They go there. Other dogs dig because they smell something in the dirt, vermin and such, right? And so they want to dig to get that. So honestly, most of the time it's just fun. And so they dig because it's fun. So enrichment, providing enrichment for that dog is super important because you're taking that energy that's going into destructive digging and you're putting it into something more appropriate. And usually what I look at when I have an in-person client with a digger is I think about, okay, your dog loves to dig. Say you have like a terrier, dogs that were bred to dig, to like hunt vermin and do that stuff. And coonhound could fit in there too, where I want to give them an outlet for that natural instinct, for that natural drive. And so is there a place in your yard that you're okay with them digging, right? But the flower bed's off limits. Well, let's create this dig pit, right? And if you don't have anything in your yard area, or you don't have a yard, you can create a dig pit with like a kiddie pool, right? You can build them. There's lots of DIY stuff out there for dig pits, where you're giving that dog the opportunity to practice that natural behavior in an appropriate place, right? And not somewhere like your flower beds or under the fence. That's another reason dogs dig, if they want to escape, which is a different issue. So for the digging, I would create somewhere appropriate for the dog to dig. Or if there really is not anywhere that's feasible for that household, then I will really look at other enrichment activities that can help ease that excess energy and channel it into something else, is what I would do for the digging. What was the other one? The nipping. Nipping's a big topic. I think we did a Yappy Hour about it, and then we also have a Puppy Essentials workshop about it because there's a lot of info for nipping. But it really is, especially after just waking up, that makes sense. They're awake, right? They have all that energy. They also might be hungry, so they're a little bit extra nippy. You want to redirect as much as you can preemptively. So proactive training here, right? It's a lot easier to prevent bad behavior than it is to fix it, right? Once it's happened. So I always try to redirect. So having nipping shields around that you can redirect the dog to, of, hey, put your mouth on this instead of my sweatpants, right? That's really important. When they are nipping, you need to figure out, how am I going to interrupt this so that it makes you back off for a second, so then that I have a chance to give you something else to bite and chew at. I do like a startling noise, but name recognition is great here too, right? So very simple training behaviors where you just teach them, hey, right, look at you when I say your name, or ouch, right? And it makes them go, oops, right? That usually works better for puppies than adult dogs. So having that opportunity to interrupt and then redirect, right? And then enrichment, give them something to chew and nip on so that all of that energy is going into something appropriate. I don't know if she did say puppy, right? For the coonhound, they might be teething. So especially providing something to chew on during the teething phase is really important. So that way, again, it's going to something appropriate rather than her sweatpants. As she goes. Also, flirt pull is a really good idea, like especially if they're outside in the morning and the puppy's kind of got the zoomies and wants to nip and bite at sweatpants. Having a flirt pull, which is just like a giant cat toy for dogs, is a really good opportunity to let them burn that excess energy, but have them chase something else that's not your pant leg, and it's an appropriate toy. Also a great opportunity to practice drop it. So
that actually sounds like a good okay. Nastasia, I got it, I think, just said, never mind, you just answered it, because she had actually put in the chat that her Frenchie puppy is also mixed with Boston Terrier, super playful, and is gets a little crazy and starts jumping and biting her calf, which of course hurts. And she tries redirecting, and also like I guess she gets bored with her toys after a couple of days. But it sounds like maybe the flirt pole would be really good for her.
I love them. One, because sometimes I'm just lazy and I'm like, I don't want to run around right now. So I'm going to sit and just do this, right? Because it's just a pull and then the line and then the toys at the end. You can also switch out the toy at the end. So there's some variety. But it's a great way to redirect crazy puppy zoomies and nipping away from you while still letting them burn that energy as you do it. If for that last question too, the like losing interest in toys, what you can do is you can actually rotate your toys so that they don't have access to the toy for too long before it disappears and something new shows up. I had one client who would put like 3 or 4 toys in a paper bag for each day of the week. It was like her puppy's lunch, right? Like her little lunch bag. And every day she would just open that one. The other toys went away until the next time. So there was a rotation of toys so that they were still new and exciting. And so that way they had higher value versus if it's always there and always available, it's just another toy, right? So that's how we also build drive for toys in trainings, because there's some things we don't want to use food for as rewards. We want to use toys. And so there's some dogs who are like, I could care less about that toy. But if we make it new, right, and we make it exciting and we keep that value high by not giving them just easy access to it, it has higher value and builds the toy drive. So especially like dogs training for agility, you need like toy drive for. So I would just start kind of playing around, switching out the toys, and like putting some away for a few days and then bringing them back out and see if there's a little bit higher value there for them.
All right. Mabel wanted to be part of the next question.
She's like, I do, but I don't want to look at you.
And yeah, she's peacing out, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, she's so cute. I love her.
Oh, nap time. Okay. So the next question comes in from Debbie, who says, I have a 5-month-old puppy who gets the zoomies in the morning and night. During many zoomies, she comes after me and jumps and tries to bite. Okay, so it's another jumping and biting zoomie question.
Yeah. So things like redirection, right? We just wrote an article about zoomies, so I'll include that as well in the follow-up resources. But yeah, so redirecting to something that is giving the dog the opportunity to get that energy out, that's more exciting than you. One thing too you can do if you have a really nippy puppy and they're kind of overstimulated is sometimes I will take a little handful of their kibble or some treats, and as they're being crazy and like before they're about to get me, I will go and I will throw the treats down and scatter them for them. And they're like, oh. And so then their nose is on the ground, right? So you're interrupting the behavior by just throwing treats in their face, right? And that way they're redirected to something and it gives me the opportunity to go, what do I want them to do next? Which is not bite me, right? Instead, I want them to go after the flirt pole. Now I can grab the flirt pole and get it out and burn that energy for them, right? Or I can get them a chew, right? Or after they're finished eating their treats, I'm going to pick them up, bitey end away from my face, and they go in their playpen or their crate with a longer lasting chew, something like that they can get on. For zoomies, though, I really do recommend the flirt pole because they want to run and they're just crazy at that moment. So I don't expect them to be able to just calm down all of a sudden. So using the flirt pole is good. Tug. If you have like a long tug toy, like this one, something long, that can be good too to redirect their attention to. But there is also if you're going to nip at me, I'm out, right? Like I'm not going to play this game. And sometimes that happens. They're so overstimulated that they can't focus on anything. And so it's just like, okay, I am not going to be a part of this. And I'm getting frustrated. So I'm going to remove myself. And I might be like, okay, I'm going to the other room. Bye. Right. And I walk over the gate and they're in there. Right. Make sure to give them something appropriate to do instead. But that is a consequence. If you're going to get overstimulated and nip at me, I leave or you leave and I put you in your pen. So yeah.
Kathleen was wondering, how do you burn off energy with a flirt pole if the puppy keeps grabbing the bottom part?
Bottom
Do they
part.
need to know drop it first?
Right. No, they don't need to know drop it first. It's helpful, and actually flirt pull training is a great way to teach drop it. If by the bottom part you mean like the toy part or like the handle part, just kind of depends. The toy part. Yeah. So if they keep grabbing the bottom part, awesome, right? Use it. It's almost more of a tug toy in that moment, right? Rather than a chase and catch kind of toy. And that's fine. And it actually gives you the opportunity to practice drop it. And you can use a treat to be like, drop it, right? You could put the treat in front of their nose so they smell it and they go, and they go, here you go, good job. And then play resumes. You can also train it without treats, right? If they're play motivated. What I do, I don't have my flirt pole up here. It's the one thing that's not in this magic box I'm in, is you're playing with a flirt pole and I stop moving it and I say drop it. The thing with flirt poles is it's easy for them to keep playing. So I will slowly just take up the middle part, right? That excess part in the middle, and I will wait. So for example, if my puppy has this end, I'm playing, and then I stop playing and I go drop it, right? I will, and they don't drop it, I will basically take away as much of the toy as possible, and I don't play tug. And so they're just like, this isn't as fun. This is not as fun. And I will wait. And then once they go and they let go, good job, here's the toy. Sorry, I just woke up the puppy with the squeak. Great. So you can practice drop it by using the flirt pole as the reward. But one thing with the flirt pole is you can also just wait until you can kind of, she has it, she's playing with it. You can kind of wait till she sits with it, lets it go for a second, and then I flick it again, and then they have to chase, right? So it doesn't always have to be get it and let go, get it and let go. They can catch it and they can enjoy it for a little bit. They won the game. And they enjoy it. And then once they go, oh, it went over here again, right? Do you want this? No, I just woke you up. So there's a couple ways depending on what you want to work on, but you can just go through that play session and let her have a ball with that toy because she's getting to play tug with less work on your end. You go.
All right. This next one's kind of long, so sit back and get comfortable, everybody. This is a question from Jane. She says, I have a 7-month-old Parson, a Russell Terrier named Abby. She's extremely lively and lately has found her voice. Training is coming along pretty well, but she's become very skittish around bigger dogs. I did well getting her out with other dogs when she was younger, but even then she displayed fear with bigger dogs and even when hearing bigger dogs barking. Now, when she sees, even from a distance, a large dog, she goes ballistic with ferocious sounding barking. I'm sure it's fear-induced. Yesterday, when we were out walking, we came upon a largish poodle-type dog in his fenced yard. We approached slowly while I fed her treats. She seemed fine. The other dog didn't bark or move or do anything much. When we got a couple of feet from the fence, Abby lost it, and I had to drag her away. Even from across the field, she was still freaked out and kept looking back at the fence. The other dog never even barked. I don't want her to be afraid, of course, but we live in a suburban neighborhood and rarely come into contact with other dogs or people, especially now with social distancing in play. I know you can't help with our neighborhood, but maybe there's something you can suggest about calming her when she gets into these fear fits. It can be quite disturbing and very loud, and she's riled up for some time after.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack in that question. So this is what we call leash reactivity, sometimes called leash aggression. And it's almost always fear-induced. In some rarer cases, it's frustration-based where they like really want to go see the other dog. And so they bark and lose their mind. And that comes off really scary looking. And in very, very rare cases, is it truly aggression for aggression's sake. So it's almost always fear-induced, which it sounds like this could be with her dog. Also, even if you do everything you're supposed to do socializing wise, they hang out with other dogs when they're younger, we don't really know the cause of leash reactivity. We know things that contribute to it. So we know what we can do to avoid it, but it's hard. It's a lot like separation anxiety. We don't know what really causes it. In certain cases, it might well be one bad event that dog went through that then makes them fearful of that context in the future. But in other cases, I've worked with dogs who nothing bad ever happened to them. They just react to other dogs, larger dogs, smaller dogs, people, bikes, whatever it might be. This could be a whole yappy hour in itself. So me and I were talking before we started that next yappy hour, we are going to make leash reactivity its own yappy hour. So that will be October's yappy hour. It is a big topic. So just to get her started would be managing the environment. So I always think about, I don't want this behavior to get practiced, because every time a dog does the behavior, it's getting reinforced and they're more likely to have that reaction the next time. So I don't want to force the dog closer to something that I know they've been reactive to in the past, outside of behavior modification training. So I would manage distance. This is the easiest way. If you have a dog who barks at other dogs at, say, 10 feet away, but at 15 feet away, they're okay. They know the other dog's there, but they're not having that reaction quite yet. They're not having the display. Then I'm going to make sure I'm always 15 or more feet away as I go. So not walking by the fence, right? Going to the other side of the road if you have to walk by. Sounded like she did pretty well until she got right up to the fence. So also another dog who's just sitting there and not moving can be very disconcerting to another dog. Like there's not a lot of body language to read there if they're just still, and stillness is communication, right? So that could be a trigger where she might not have even seen the dog. She probably smelled it, but all of a sudden it's like right next to her, and that's the freak out moment. That's what we call the threshold, the distance that they can be without freaking out, but they know that trigger, the thing that freaks them out, is there, right? So I always want to stay under threshold, because that's where their brain can learn. If I go over threshold, they're reacting and their brain is just like white noise, right? They're just freaking out. I'm not going to be able to teach them anything in that moment. And it's really just exploding with stress hormones and chemicals in their brain, right? So cortisol goes way high, and it takes time for cortisol to relax. So I think she mentioned she walked way across the field and she was still freaked out and amped up. That's normal, right? There was one client I worked with, their dog, 3 days it took after a bad experience, like if they went over threshold and reacted to their trigger, it took 3 days before that dog was comfortable going back out on leash again. It's a long recovery time, right? But every dog's different. But that's normal. The brain is flushing out all those stress hormones. So I want to keep them under threshold as much as I can. And then I'm going to start creating a new emotional response. That's what we call a conditioned emotional response to that particular trigger. So seeing other dogs means something good happens to you, counter conditioning, right? But I always am working just under threshold. So you see the dog, oh, chicken, right? You see the dog, chicken. We do that for a couple of minutes and then we leave, right? We go further away. So I'm not forcing the dog closer to the thing that freaks them out. With leash reactivity, there's always moments when a dog walks around the corner, right? Or a person walks around the corner, whatever the dog is triggered to, that you can't control. So practicing a lot of redirection management, of like name recognition, emergency U-turns, right? Learning how to like use driveways and cars as visual blockers and things like that to your advantage, so that you can make sure your dog doesn't react so badly that they can't come back down under threshold, and that you can kind of just enjoy your walks. So many people, I'm sure, in the neighborhoods I've worked in are like, why is this lady in my driveway? Because I will walk up people's driveway to get further away from a dog walking on the other side of the street or whatever it is. So practicing some of those handling exercises with the dog, and then starting to do the behavior modification with counter conditioning. It's a big process. It's doable. It just takes some time and consistency. It's that and separation anxiety are probably the top two things I work on in my one-on-ones. But next Yappy Hour, we'll go even further into leash reactivity. I could talk forever about it. My goodness.
Okay, so we're at close to 6:10, so I just want to be mindful of everybody's time.
But I could talk for hours about dogs.
We can all listen to you talk for hours about dogs. Okay, so Kathleen has a few questions. First being, what do you do when the puppy is in a snarling state, wanting to bite and nothing works? She bites at my feet and hands, and sometimes I can't even pick her up. Bully stick, ignoring, never found a word that startles her. Startling with treats and sit works sometimes, but she also starts biting to get the treats.
Yeah, food motivated. If you are using a treat to like refocus her and interrupt her a little bit, toss the treats on the floor. So that way, again, her nose is on the ground. So that can be the new interrupter as well. But think about like she's overstimulated probably, like if that's what snarly state means, that's how I would describe it a lot of the times. So overstimulation, right? Sometimes if it's possible, you can leave, right? So it's like, I'm out, have that 1 to 2 minutes of like, nope, I'm not going to do this right now. And then think about what can I give the puppy to do instead. Also really think about, when is this happening the most? Usually I see that overstimulation when they're really tired, or when they're hungry. And so then I can kind of react differently when I'm like, you're doing this because you're starved. Puppies are always acting like they're starving. But it's dinner time, and so I'm just gonna go get your food. Have you sit for your food, or go to pen, go to crate, whatever it is. Then you get your food, and that usually can help keep them from getting overstimulated. When they're overtired, I really will scoop up the puppy and go. So if you need to use treats to get her nose on the ground so that you can pick her up, like face this way. He's so long. It's hard. So like he can get nippy sometimes, and I will actually pick him up more like this, because then he can't reach around and get my hand. I don't know if you can see. Oh yeah,
Whap in the face with his ears.
Whap me. So sometimes I'll do that just to be able to move them, even though they're like, why, right? So you can do that. But if you need her to redirect to something and you know treats will work, use that, right? Toss a couple on the floor so that either you can scoop her up in the best way, so she can't whip around and get you, right? And then put her in her pen, put her in her crate, whatever it is that you need to do. Or if it's like super bad, she's overstimulated, you can also be like, bye, right? And usually they get that pretty quick, because what they want is to hang out with you, right? And so if you leave, that's the consequence there, as you go. They do grow out of it. It doesn't last forever, this nipping phase, thank God, as he's about to chew on my hand.
Next question. How do you stop barking that isn't for potty and won't stop when ignored?
So like demand barking, there's like 9-10 different kinds of barking. If it's, you're going to go down there because you're getting nippy. If it's demand barking, like if they want your attention, or there could be a lot of things a dog demands. Food is a big one. Think about the reason behind why they're doing it. So if they're not barking to go to the bathroom, then what are they barking for? So I'm assuming it might be like in the crate or the playpen. They could be distress barking. Depends on how well they're doing with their crate training and pen training. If they're distress barking, I usually don't want to wait it out. I want to reassure my puppy and then think about, how am I making this crate and this pen a positive place for you to be? How am I providing enough enrichment to make sure that you are getting that energy out, so you're not bored in your pen or your crate? But yeah, so I want to really drill down on why they're barking if it's not to go potty. Demand barking, you can do a thing. This is not my favorite technique, but some people are committed enough to do it, where you wait for the extinction burst in barking. So an extinction burst is where a behavior is ignored. And so the behavior usually increases in intensity and frequency until eventually they realize this doesn't work anymore and they stop barking. That's the extinction burst, right? So it's a lot like humans. We go to a soda machine, put in money, push the button, and nothing comes out. We always push that button more, right? There's people who knock that thing over. They're working through an extinction burst, right? And so then eventually we give up, we go get our soda somewhere else. But with barking, you really have to be good at ignoring it long enough that it actually gets to extinction burst, which if you can do it, props to you, because listening to Fozzie bark makes me want to scream, right? It's so piercing. And so it can take quite a while, especially if a dog has learned barking previously got me your attention, even if it was a no, stop. You go, oh, you talked to me, you looked at me, right? And so if they've learned in the past, it gets them something, and then all of a sudden it's not working, remember, they're going to do it harder and longer. They're going to keep going, right? Until eventually they hit that extinction burst. It is so hard to ride that wave, you guys. So I actually don't recommend waiting on extinction to happen. Instead, I think about, why are they barking? What do I need to change about the environment to make sure that they're getting the enrichment they need, or the space management, whatever it is that's causing the barking. And so if it was like pest or barking another dog, I'm going to separate with space and then make sure that there's some energy burning for the puppy. There's lots of things that could be contributing to it. So I really want to drill down on the type of barking. I'll put that resource. We have one that kind of goes through the top 8 or 9 reasons for barking. So I'll put that resource in the follow-up email. And then if Kathleen wants to email me after looking at that and being like, it might be this, then we can kind of troubleshoot it too and see. It's a hard one.
Sebastian would like to ask his question himself.
Oh, sure.
Let's try to get you off of mute.
Hi.
There you go.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to ask a question because recently I noticed my my puppy. It's a 4.5, just over a month border collie, and he either showing a jealousy towards other members of the family, or he just doesn't like them. I don't know. And I'm not sure how to sort of distinguish that and potentially how to tackle it as well. So basically, an example would be, I think I would be considered the alpha in our sort of family. So whenever my wife would either approach us, he would start like growling. It's not a violent one, but it's enough to say either he doesn't like the closeness, or he doesn't like the fact that she's approaching me. And this would also kind of work whenever he is, well, not necessarily playing, but having something, whether it's a piece of like stick or a toy. So he normally would come round and sometimes kind of encourage us to play with him by like growling, but you can kind of distinguish the type of growl he uses. So yeah, I don't know really how. I was trying to ask my wife to maybe try and fight for his trust a bit more, but yeah, I was just not sure exactly how to.
Oh, and that's not a bad point. It is something where there's a little bit of relationship building that could be really beneficial. At that age, you kind of want to prevent it from getting worse, right? So you're at a good age to prevention. So it could be a couple things, where it could be he is resource guarding you, right? So
yeah,
like, no, he's mine, right? Yeah. It could be space guarding, not necessarily you. Do you know if does he ever do that to her when you're not there?
It happens as well, yeah. So again, that's why I wasn't sure whether it is something else than jealousy or it's as well a jealousy. But yeah, and so today we actually kind of conducted this experiment when he kind of brought a piece of log that he started to get really well chew on and be really fond of, and my wife just asked me to take the piece of log from him, and he would give it off freely without any fuss, where she wouldn't without him growling. He would give it up, and he because he's quite good with like a drop command. He would respond to that. It's just that initial behavior, whether it being instinctive or, well, obviously very, very like specific or driven. I don't know. Just, yeah, was wondering.
Yeah, I would. It's definitely, well, I can't say definitely because I haven't seen video, I haven't seen in person, but it sounds like resource guarding and different kinds of resources, right? So what I would do, you were on the right track thinking, well, how about we build some trust, right? Some relationship between your wife and the dog, where she's doing a lot of trade practice where you start with drop it, which is awesome because then you can always use that as backup, right? But you can also train a trade which doesn't have a verbal cue with it, where it doesn't rely on you saying drop it first. It's where my hand is near you while you're chewing on the toy and something good happens over here so that I can get the toy. I will include a video in the follow-up resources where Kiko Pup, again, who I mentioned earlier in this Yappy Hour, it shows us this practice of I can touch the toy, right? And I'm not going to take it, right? So you're creating this idea of if I reach for this, even if I don't say drop it, something good is going to happen to you.
I'm so sorry. Hi.
No. So then in the future, it starts to just become, okay, people can reach their hand my way, even if I have something that I really enjoy. Sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't, but I don't need to growl because when they have taken it, something good has happened to me. Just kind of teaching an uncued trade. So I'll include that video because she breaks it down into really specific steps.
So that's something good. Do you mean treats, or do you mean like having a play, or?
Yeah, I was like, if he really likes those toys, use those. So something equal or better. Treats might be better, right? Because it's food.
he's very food driven or motivated. Yeah. So,
but you don't have to go straight to treats. You might want to in the beginning to show him it is very worth it, but use that toy drive and that enjoyment of that specific item as a way to be like, I will give you something equal or better, right? So this is a good deal for you. The other thing you might want to have for practice, or everyone practice really, is a little bit of kind of like say please for everything for him. Some people call this nothing in life is free training, where the dog really has to think about, I need to do something to get something I want, right? You might want to incorporate that a little bit, where it's like, if you want this toy to begin with, it's coming from me, but you have to give me something awesome, like a sit or a touch. It doesn't have to be hard, right? It just has to be
on command, or just something, that he would think of by himself.
Well, you can play it both ways on that one. You can do some pre-shaping, which is a training technique where you don't tell the dog what you want. And then
a lot of things happening really when he's not giving any cue and he knows there's a treat, then he would do them all.
The whole thing. Yeah. And that's awesome because his brain is like, what do I have to do? Right. And so it's good training, but you can also just pick an easy one, especially if you don't have time to wait through the whole repertoire. So you can have a little bit of that where he has to, especially with Fern, he wants anything awesome, something that he wants, he's got to earn it a little bit, right? It'll build some trust too with them, where she's also a big part of the training for him and the relationship building as you go. The other thing for the approaching when you're sitting with him, one thing you can do is before he starts growling, she approaches, he gets a treat. This is where I would use treats because food's so powerful. She approaches, he gets a treat, and then she walks away, right? She approaches, he gets a treat, she walks away. As you work this, you should see where she can approach a step closer and then a step closer, with each repetition, and he's not growling because he's like, her approaching predicts something good for me, right? And so I like having her around, right? The other option is management, where she's like, can I come sit down, right? And you tell him off, go to your bed, whatever it is, here's something over here, a toy to chew, whatever. And then she can sit, right? So a little bit of, I am claiming this space. If I want to sit here, I'm going to tell my dog off and make sure it happens so that I can sit down and so they don't be like, but this is mine, right? So a little bit of that. That's what I would do.
So also in I'm not sure whether I'm kind of doing that the right way, but whenever this occurs, so when he kind of growls, I would actually raise my voice ever so slightly to tell him off. That's not the way he's supposed to behave. And you can tell by his behavior, he knows that he's doing something wrong, and he would be very apologetic. But obviously that's in like as a result. So obviously I'd like to prevent the initial his instinctive sort of reaction. But the question is whether I should be telling him that this was wrong, or should I just leave it unnoticed?
In this situation, you actually don't, because we aren't quite sure what association he's making as far as what was wrong. Was it the growl, which is a really useful communication signal for dogs? You don't want to train out a growl from a dog.
Yeah. Okay.
Or was he associating that the verbal correction with your wife approaching? So then he now is like, well, every time she comes near, I get corrected. So it can actually increase that
Okay.
towards her. So this is where that exercise where if she approaches, he's under threshold, where it's like, okay, I see the thing that previously I didn't really like.
Preempted, yeah.
Yeah. But before he starts growling, ooh, something yummy happens. And then she goes away. So it's not forcing it too fast, right?
Yeah.
Do some repetitions. And then that distance gets smaller and smaller, where he's actually like, I love it when you come here, right? And so that way it's creating a new association, and it's a positive one. Because when that whole guilty look that dogs give is actually an appeasement signal, where they usually have no idea what it was that they did wrong, but they're like, you are mad, so I'm going to give you all the body language signals that make me look cute and not a threat. And usually humans are like, good job, right? So it works on us. They have us very well trained. But they're not quite making the association that we want them to make.
Would that be the same when it comes to, because and I'm not sure, but it's probably linked in a way. But whenever like I'm in a kitchen, and we've kind of taught him now that he's supposed to like settle, and at the moment he basically tries to settle where my foot is, and especially touching it, so just to make sure that I didn't forget about him. So when he settles, and obviously he's hoping to get something in return, and we do treat him occasionally, and sometimes, and again, it mainly happens with my wife. I don't know whether it's a coincidence or not. But again, when she approaches, he then growls again. And I'm not sure whether it's because he thinks that she would prevent him from getting that food, potentially, or whether, again, it's the same kind of association, between them two. And again, obviously, if this is the same thing, then I know how to kind of fight it now. But if it's not, then what else this potentially?
They could be related. In that case, with the kitchen, it's also where food is prepared. So we're adding in another resource to our.
Yeah.
So like the couch, it could be you.
All right, fair enough.
Oh, kitchen could be food and you, right?
Yeah.
So, and I have the same problem with Fozzie right now. When I'm cooking, he wants to sit on my foot. And I swear one day it's going to kill me in the kitchen. So I've actually started training that settle for him on a mat just outside of the kitchen. So that's another option where it's
I've actually did start that. I've started that already, because he was just everywhere, and there were times where I would trip over him because he would suddenly change his position without me even realizing. And so we now kind of got him to kind of go into his crate where he waits. And
that's perfect. So having them be like, you can settle over here from underfoot. The other thing that you might want your wife to start doing, besides the other stuff we talked about, where if she is approaching, because there's going to be times when you're just living life and you can't do a training repetitions for this.
Yeah.
If she's approaching, if she takes a treat or a toy, whatever he's interested in that moment, and throws it away from her. So like if he's on the couch with you and she's like, I want to go sit down, but I do not have time to like go through the process. I'm going to grab a piece of chicken. And what's your dog's name?
Echo,
and be like, Echo, and tosses the treat on the floor across the room. She just got him to move, right? And had a positive interaction where he's like, oh, you predict chicken, right? But the chicken's over here, so that helps manage the space. Same thing with the kitchen too. She could toss, like the treat happens over in his crate.
All right.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So So play around with those two ways where you're conditioning for approach and the treat's coming from you, but then also the treat can come from her. I wouldn't do from the hand necessarily. I would just have her.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then just in response to your, like, I think it was a couple of months back where it was about like resource guarding, and then basically the question I asked then was how to well, whether it's worth like digging in like the dog's kind of bowel when he eats, to kind of get him used to a human being around and being able to do whatever, where you just told me not to really encourage that kind of not to interrupt him whilst he's eating, and to again associate like a human's approach with something positive. So we started to incorporate that, and that really worked as well. So just wanted to thank you. It did work. Although we did like I used to use the sprats. But because he's so like food motivated, he would like inhale these so quickly that it would sometimes end up with him like vomiting the food shortly after he's finished, because he would like grab them so quickly without like chewing. So at the moment we just try to use kibble in the same sort of way, but it does work, and he seems really happy. Whenever someone approaches. And
so same idea with the couch and my kitchen or whatever. I think it's her approach maybe, so it might be space more than anything. It's the same idea though, like your wife approaching means something good happens, and so then people look forward to it. And
exactly. So
yeah, well, that's awesome. Good to hear. Thanks for the update.
Yeah, thank you. One last question as well. It's completely different nature, but it's about leash walking. Again, we started to train him, and it works okay when I go solo. But again, when we go as a family, again, I don't know whether his instincts start to show now, where he is beginning to herd, especially my two daughters, and they often go ahead. He wants to be ahead of them, so there's no way he would like walk close by. Even with like treats, he doesn't really see treats anymore, and looks like he wants to like jump on them as well as soon as they try to go ahead.
Sounds like
so I think it's that herding instinct now, and I'm not sure if there is a way of actually training him when we go out as family.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So it's very hard, because that is in its own way a threshold for your dog. It's the distraction level. So if he's so close to the thing that he wants to engage with, herding or whatever it is, or just like, I want to be with them, then it's very hard to teach them anything in that moment. Right? You either have to have something really high value that keeps their focus and is more reinforcing for them than getting to herd or whatever it is, or we have to be really far away. So actually, I would suggest really building a foundation of him walking with you, but also walking with your wife, relationship building. Just you guys, if it's possible, where you're really building a strong loose leash walk, or even a heel, depending on what you want to train for your life. Really building that without the distraction of the kids. And then as he gets better and better, he gets older and a little less just all over the place. Then you start adding in those different levels of distraction. Like the whole family's going to go out, but wife and kids are 20, 30 feet ahead or behind, far enough away that he's not like, he's like, you're so close, I can get there, right? But it's like, they're kind of out of your
seems to be the case all the time. I can get there.
So you want to start it where it's like, okay, you see it, but we're still going to be over here. You're going to be getting lots of rewards, whether it's toys, because again, herding breeds, toys are really powerful for them sometimes. Or if it's treats, like you're going to be getting those here. So even if they're way up there, you can still focus. And then as you work, it's a lot easier for them to handle that distraction as you go. There's also like parallel walks. Sometimes those work a little better for dogs that want to pull ahead or drag behind to other people in the family, whether it's a dog or people, where it's parallel. So I don't know if where you live, if there's sidewalks on both sides of the street, sometimes having the dog and the handler on one and then the family over here is far enough away that they're not dragging one way. They actually feel like, okay, we're all here, right? So sometimes that will build the distraction too.
I'd have to train my girls to do that then. Because they often want to go ahead as well. So
so build up the distraction level a little bit. If you can, start with just the foundation and then add in those layers. And as he gets older too, and is just doing training all around, he'll be more focused. With that, I mean, they have laser sharp brains, those border collies. So really focusing them on you, just practice and some maturity a little bit. But
okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Me, are there any other questions in chat? I haven't been looking, so. Okay. Well, Mabel's been very barky. She was like
the best bark. She sounds like a gremlin. Cool. I think we got through everything on the sentient ones too, so that's fantastic. We went, really over time. So next month is going to be leash reactivity. So we'll talk about what to do if a dog barks at people, dogs, things, certain triggers while out on a leash walk. We'll also talk about ways to prevent it. So if anyone has puppies, we'll talk about things. I hate saying prevent because just like separation anxiety, we don't know the cause in some cases. So how are you going to prevent it if you don't know what causes it? But things you can do to help dogs be able to cope with seeing things out while on leash. Something I'm working on right now with Fozzie, who's decided that, I see dogs and I want to bark at them. So I feel the pain.
Sorry, so if there's no further questions, just a bonus. One, is there and when a good time to start phasing out treating a dog? And not necessarily completely, but like every other time maybe. And I'm not sure if there's an age or if there is a kind of state depending on his abilities. I don't know.
That's a great question. And I will throw the full article I wrote about this. It's called Be a Slot Machine, How to Fade Out Dogs. But there's no age. It's really dependent on the behavior and the progression in the behavior. So when I have a dog who is what we call fluent in a behavior or salient, they can perform it really well the majority of the time around different distractions. Then I start fading out the treats, right? Now I might start fading out the treats for a sit in my house really early. If they are really good at sit in my kitchen, I'm not going to treat it every time. I'll always reward with praise or maybe sometimes a toy, whatever, like good dog, right? But I'm going to start fading out treats there. But when I go out into a new environment, right, I'm going to bring the treats back almost every repetition until I get some fluency there and then fade those treats out, right? So it does depend on the progression of the behavior itself and how well they're doing. And usually what you see is once they get a few practices and they learn how to perform a behavior pretty well around 3 or 4 distractions, then a lot of times any new distraction, you don't have to treat every time because they've generalized it, right? They've learned, okay, this behavior is worth it. Sometimes I get a treat, so I'm going to keep doing it because maybe this time. So it's just like humans and slot machines, which is why I wrote that article that way. So we keep putting in money thinking eventually we'll get paid out. Yeah. And the casinos have us figured out. There's an algorithm for human behavior where how often do I need to reward you so that you keep doing this, right? And so we just have to find that with our dogs. So yeah, it's just behavior dependent. But in my house, like my dogs don't get rewarded for basic behaviors with a treat every time. Sometimes if I have one, but outside, especially with Fozzie, who's 4 months right now, outside it is very, very frequent treat rewards for behaviors. Until eventually he'll get to be like Suki, who's 10 and a half, who sometimes gets a treat, but otherwise it's just kind of normal behavior. So.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll add that into the resources follow up. But yeah, thanks everyone. I should probably go cook dinner for the family, but thank you for joining me. And then I will post this to YouTube tomorrow and send out that follow-up email for everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cathy.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Bye.